Ah, there it goes. Okay, welcome back to another thrilling installment of, what did we set it up as? Mike Muddling Mondays. We're still going to be fiddling with this thing. Definitely picking up more ambient audio, which isn't great, but hopefully that won't be too audible. It wasn't too bad last week. Or, the last installment, I should say. Um, I have cranked up the decibel gain a bit. If it winds up being too loud, tell me. Mostly complaints are that I'm too quiet. Some of them are inexplicably much quieter than others for reasons I'm not totally sure of, because I haven't really muddled too much. But some of those are pretty old, and I might not have twigged to how quiet it was, because I might have had the thing nudged out of position, whatever. Anyway, we're going to keep reading more tales from Beyond the Rift by Peter Watts. This week we should be getting to The Eyes of God and Flesh Made Word. Flesh Made Word is kind of a bummer. The Eyes of God I don't honestly remember. How many pages is that? It's like 30 pages. How long is the one after that? The one after that's pretty short too. Hopefully we'll get to the one after that as well, because I rather like that one. Let's tentatively also add Nimbus to the list. That one's a cutie. I'm quite fond of that. Oh, but Mayfly is great too. Well, we'll get that this Wednesday. It looks like I will be here for Friday as well, which is nice. So we should be able to get through the whole book. That is the hope and the plan. Anything else? Mayfly's great. I like Mayfly quite a bit. It's kind of bittersweet. Let's see. I am going to fake it with The Eyes of God because I don't remember the opening of this one at least. I also have to look to find that one that he did about sentient yogurt bacteria or whatever it was. He's got a bunch of short stories you can find on his website, rifters.com, as well as the entire volumes of Blind Sight, the entire Starfish series. I don't think he has... Echopraxy is not there last I checked, and I don't think... what's it called? The Freeze Frame Revolution is there. Nor is Crisis Legion, but that's totally expected because that's a licensed property. So that's never going to be made free to read. Unless you know where to look. Anyway, without further ado, let's get crack-a-lacking on The Eyes of God. How about that? That sound good? I think it sounds good. I have to remember what button I set to mute this thing while I chug water. Jeez Louise, where is it? The Eyes of God by Peter Watts. I am not a criminal. I have done nothing wrong. They've just caught a woman at the front of the line, mocha-skinned, mid-30s, eyes wide and innocent beneath the brim of her La Senza beret. She dosed herself with oxytocin from the sound of it, tried to subvert the meat in the system. A smile, a wink, that extra chemical nudge that bypasses logic and whispers right to the brainstem. This one's a friend. No need to put her through the machines. But I guess she forgot. We're all machines here, tweaked and tuned and retrofitted down to the molecules. The guards have been immunized against argument and aerosols. They lead her away, indifferent to her protests. I try to follow their example, harden myself against whatever awaits her on the other side of the white door. What was she thinking to try a stunt like that? Whatever hides in her head must be more than mere inclination. They don't yank paying passengers for evil fantasies. Not yet, anyway. Not yet. She must have done something. She must have acted. Half an hour before the plane boards. There are at least 50 law-abiding citizens ahead of me, and they haven't started processing us yet. The buzz box looms dormant at the front of the line like a great armored crab, newly installed, mouth agape. One of the guards in its shadow starts working her way up the line, spot-checking some passengers, bypassing others, feeling lucky after the first catch of the day. In a just universe, I would have nothing to fear from her. I'm not a criminal. I have done nothing wrong. The words cycle in my head like a defensive affirmation. I am not a criminal. I have done nothing wrong. But I know that fucking machine is going to tag me anyway. At the head of the queue, the Chamber of Secrets lights up. A canned female voice announces the dawning of pre-board security, echoing through the harsh acoustics of the terminal. The guards slouch to attention. We gave up everything to join this line. Smart tags, jewelry, my pocket office, all confiscated until the far side of redemption. The buzz box needs a clear view into our heads. Even an earring can throw it off. People with medical implants and antique mercury fillings aren't welcome here. There's a side queue for those types, a special room where old-fashioned interrogations and cavity searches are still the order of the day. The omnipresent voice orders all WestJet passengers with epilepsy, cochlear dysfunction, or Gray syndrome to identify themselves to security prior to entering the scanner. Other passengers who do not wish to be scanned may opt to forfeit their passage. WestJet regrets that it cannot offer refunds in such cases. WestJet is not responsible for neurological side effects, temporary or otherwise, that may result from the use of the scanner. Use of the scanner constitutes acceptance of these conditions. There have been side effects. A few garden-variety epileptics had minor fits in the early days. A famous Oxford atheist, you remember, the guy who wrote all the books, caught a devout and abiding faith in the Christian God from a checkpoint at Heathrow, although some responsibility was ultimately laid at the feet of the pre-existing tumor that killed him 2 months later. One widowed grandmother from St. Paul's was all over the news last year when she emerged from a courthouse buzzbox with an insatiable sexual fetish for running shoes. That could have cost Sony a lot if she hadn't been a forgiving soul who chose not to litigate. Rumors that she'd used S-Wank just prior to making that decision were never confirmed. Destination? The guard has arrived while I wasn't looking. Her laser... She's got a very deep voice. Her laser licks my face with biometric taste buds. I blink away the after images. Destination? She says again. Yellowknife. She scans her handpad. Business or pleasure? There's no point to these questions. They're not even according to the script. Swank has taken us beyond the need for petty interrogation. She just doesn't like the look of me, I bet. Maybe she just knows somehow, even if she can't put her finger on it. Neither, I say. She looks up sharply. Whatever her initial suspicions, my obvious evasiveness has cemented them. I'm attending a funeral, I explain. She moves along without a word. I know you're not here, Father. I left my faith back in childhood. Let others hold to their feeble-minded superstitions. Let them run bleating to the supernatural for comfort and excuses. Let the cowardly and the weak-minded deny the darkness with the promise of some imagined afterlife. I have no need for invisible friends. I know I'm only talking to myself. If only I could stop. I wonder if that machine will be able to eavesdrop on our conversation. I stood with you at your trial, as you stood with me years before when I had no other friend in the world. I swore on your sacred book of fairy tales that you'd never touched me, not once in all those years. Were the others lying, I wonder? I don't know. Judge not, I guess. But you were judged and found wanting. It wasn't even newsworthy. child-fondling priests are more cliché than criminal these days, have been for years, and no one cares what happens in some dick-ass town up in the territories anyway. If they'd quietly transferred you just one more time, if you'd managed to lay low just a little longer, it might not have even come to this. They could have fixed you. Or not, now that I think of it. The Vatican came down on S-Wank like it came down on cloning and the Copernican solar system before it. Mustn't fuck with the way God built you. Mustn't compromise free choice, no matter how freely you'd choose to do so. I notice that doesn't extend to tickling the temporal lobe, though. St. Michael's just spent $7 million equipping their knave for rapture on demand. Maybe suicide was the only option left to you. Maybe all you could do was follow one sin with another. It's not as though you had anything to lose. Your own scriptures damn us as much for desire as for doing. I remember asking you years ago, although I had long since thrown away my crutches, what about the sin not made manifest? What if you've coveted thy neighbor's wife or warmed yourself with thoughts of murder, but kept it all inside? You looked at me kindly, and perhaps with far greater understanding than I ever gave you credit for, before condemning me with the words of an imaginary superhero. If you've done any of these things in your heart, you said, then you've done them in the eyes of God. I feel a sudden brief chime between my ears. I could really use a drink about now. The woody aroma of a fine old scotch curling through my sinuses would really hit the spot. I glance around, spot the billboard that zapped me. Crown Royal. Fucking head spam. I give silent thanks for legal standards outlawing the implantation of brand names. They can stick cravings in my head, but hooking me on trademarks would cross some arbitrary threshold of free will. It's a meaningless gesture, a sop to the civil rights fanatics. Like the chime that preceded it, it tells me, the courts say, that I am still autonomous. As long as I know I'm being hacked, I've got a sporting chance to make my own decisions. 2 spots ahead of me, an old man sobs quietly. He seemed fine just a moment ago. Sometimes it happens. The ads trigger the wrong connections. Swank can't lay down high-def sensory panoramas without a helmet. These long-range hits don't instill so much as evoke. Smells key, they say. Primitive, lobes big enough for remote targeting, simpler to hack than the vast gigapixel arrays of the visual cortex. And so primal, so much closer to raw reptile. They spent millions finding the universal triggers. Honeysuckle reminds you of childhood. The scent of pine recalls Christmas. They can mood us up for Norman Rockwell or the Marquis de Sade, depending on the product. Nudge the right receptor neurons and the brain builds its own spam. For some people, though, honeysuckle is what you smelled when your mother got the shit beaten out of her. For some, Christmas was when you found your sister with her wrists slashed open. It doesn't happen often. The ads provoke mild unease in 1 of 1,000 of us, true distress in 1/10 as many. Some thought even that price was too high. Others quailed at the specter of machines instilling not just sights and sounds, but desires, opinions, religious beliefs. But commercials featuring cute babies or sexy women also plant desire, use sight and sound to bypass the head and go for the gut. Every debate, every argument is an attempt to literally change someone's mind. Every poem and a pamphlet a viral tool for the hacking of opinions. I'm doing it right now, some Mindscape TM flack argued last month on Macronet. I'm trying to change your neural wiring just using the sounds you're hearing. You want to ban swank because it uses sounds you can't? The slope is just too slippery. Ban swank, and you might as well ban art as well as advocacy. You might as well ban free speech itself. We both know the truth of it, Father. Even words can bring one to tears. The line moves forward. We shuffle along with smooth, ominous efficiency, one after another disappearing briefly into the buzz box, reappearing on the far side, emerging reborn from a technological baptism that elevates us all to temporary sainthood. Compressed ultrasound, Father. That's how they cleanse us. You probably saw the hype a few years back, even up there. You must have seen the papal bull condemning it, at least. Sony filed the original patent as a game interface, just after the turn of the century. Soon, they told us, the iPhones and electrodes of yore would give way to affordable little boxes that tracked you around your living room, bypassed eyes and ears entirely, and planted five-dimensional sensory experience directly into your brain. We're still waiting for those, actually. The tweaks may be ultrasonic, but the system keeps your brain in focus by tracking EM emissions, and not many consumers Faraday their homes. In the meantime, hospitals and airports and theme parks keep the dream alive until the price comes down. And the spin-offs, Father, the spin-offs are everywhere. The deaf can hear, the blind can see. The post-traumatized have all their acid memories washed away, just as long as they keep paying the connection fee. That's the rub, of course. It doesn't last. The high frequencies excite some synapses and put others to sleep, but they don't actually change any of the pre-existing circuitry. The brain eventually bounces back to normal once the signal stops, which is not only profitable for those doling out the waves, but a lot less messy in the courts. There's that whole integrity of the self thing to worry about. Having your brain rewired every time you hopped a commuter flight might raise some pretty iffy legal issues. Still, I've got to admit, it speeds things up. No more time-consuming background checks, no more invasive random searches, no litany of questions designed to weed out the troublemakers in our midst. A dash of transcranial magnetism, a squirt of ultrasound. Next. A year ago, I'd have been standing in line for hours. Today, I've been here scarcely 15 minutes, and I'm already in the top 10. And it's more than mere convenience. It's security. It's safety. It's a sigh of relief after a generation of Russian roulette. No more Edmonton infernos, no more Rio insurrections, no more buildings slagged to glass or cities sickening in the aftermath of some dirty nuke. There are still saboteurs and terrorists loose in the world, of course. Always will be. But when they strike at all, they strike in places unprotected by swanky McBuzz. Anyone who flies these friendly skies is as harmless as I am. Oh, sorry. Anyone who flies these friendly skies is as harmless as I am. Who can argue with results like that? In the old days, I could have wished I was a psychopath. They had it easy back then. The machines only looked for emotional responses. Eye saccades, skin galvanism. Anyone without a conscience would stare them down with a wide smile and an empty heart. But Swank inspired a whole new generation. The tech looks under the surface now. Prefrontal cortex stuff, glucose metabolism. Now, fiends and perverts and would-be saboteurs all get caught in the same net. Doesn't mean they don't let us go again, of course. It's not as if sociopathy is against the law. Hell, if they screened out everyone with a broken conscience, executive class would be empty. There are children scattered throughout the line. Most are accompanied by adults. 3 are not, 2 boys and a girl. They are nervous and beautiful, like wild animals, easily startled. They are not used to being on their own. The oldest can't be more than 9, and he has a freckle on the side of his neck. I can't stop watching him. Suddenly, children roam free again. For months now, I've been seeing them in parks and plazas, unguarded, innocent, and so vulnerable, as though Swank has given parents everywhere an excuse to breathe. No matter that it'll be years before it trickles out of airports and government buildings and into the places children play.
Mommy and Daddy are tired of waiting, take what comfort they can in the cameras mounted on every street corner, panning and scanning for all the world as if real people stood behind them. Mommy and Daddy can't be bothered to spend 5 minutes on the web, compiling their own Predator's Handbook on the use of laser pointers and blind spots to punch holes in the surveillance society. Mommy and Daddy would rather just take all those bromides about civil safety on faith. For so many years we've lived in fear. By now, people are so desperate for any pretense of safety they'll cling to the promise of a future that hasn't even arrived yet. Not that that's anything new. Whether you're talking about a house in the suburbs or the browning of Antarctica, Mommy and Daddy have always lived on credit. If something did happen to their kids, it would serve them right. The line moves forward. Suddenly, I'm in the front of it, at the front of it. A man with authority, with a capital A, waves me in. I step forward as if to an execution. I do this for you, Father. I do this to pay my respects. I do this to dance on your grave. If I could have avoided this moment, if this cup would have passed from me, if I could have walked to the Northwest Territories rather than let this obscene technology into my head, someone has spray-painted 2 words in stenciled black over the mouth of the machine. The Shadow. I get it. What evil lurks in the hearts of men? Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? Only the Shadow knows. Sorry, there's no only. Whatever. It's been a minute since I've watched The Shadow. That takes me back. Someone has spray-painted 2 words in stenciled black over the mouth of the machine. The Shadow. Delaying, I glance a question at the guard. It knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men, he says. Bwahaha. Let's move it along. I have no idea what he's talking about. The walls of the booth glimmer with a tight weave of copper wire. The helmet descends from above with a soft hydraulic hiss. It sits too lightly on my head for such a massive device. The visor slides over my eyes like a blindfold. I am in a pocket universe, alone with my thoughts and an all-seeing God. Electricity hums deep in my head. I'm innocent of any wrongdoing. I've never broken the law. Maybe God will see that if I think it hard enough. Why does it have to see anything? Why does it have to read the palimpsest if it's just going to scribble over it again? But brains don't work like that. Each individual is individual, wired up in a unique and glorious tangle that must be read before it can be edited. And motivations, intents, these are endless, multi-headed things, twining and proliferating from frontal cortex to cingulate gyrus, from hypothalamus to claustrum. There's no LED that lights up when your plans are nefarious, no Aniston neuron for mad bombers. For the safety of everyone, they must read it all. For the safety of everyone. I have been under this helmet for what seems like forever. Nobody else took this long. The line is not moving forward. Well, security says softly, will you look at that? I'm not, I tell him. I've never... And you're not about to. Not for the next 9 hours, anyway. I never acted on it. I sound petulant, childish. Not once. I could see that, he says, but I know we're talking about different things. The humming changes subtly in pitch. I can feel magnets and mosquitoes snapping in my head. I am changed by something not yet cheap enough for the home market. An ache evaporates, a dull longing so chronic I feel it now only in absentia. There, now we could put you in charge of 2 daycares and a chorus of altar boys, and you wouldn't even be tempted. The visor rises. The helmet floats away. Authority stares back at me from a gaggle of contemptuous faces. This is wrong, I say quietly. It is now. I haven't done anything. We haven't either. We haven't locked down your pervert brain. We haven't changed who you are. We've protected your precious constitutional rights and your God-given identity. You're as free to diddle kitties in the park as you ever were. You just won't want to for a while. But I haven't done anything. I can't stop saying it. Nobody does until they do. He jerks his head toward departure. Get out of here. You're cleared.
I am not a criminal. I have done nothing wrong. But my name is on a list now, just the same. Word of my depravity races ahead of me, checkpoint after checkpoint like a fission of dominoes. They'll be watching, though they have to let me pass. That could change before long. Even now, community standards barely recognize the difference between what we do and what we are. Nudge them just a hair further, and every border on the planet might close at my approach. But this is only the dawning of the new enlightenment, and the latest rules are not yet in place. For now, I am free to stand at your unconsecrated graveside, and mourn on my own recognizance. You always were big on the power of forgiveness, Father. 70 times 7, the most egregious sins washed away in the sight of the Lord. All it took, you insisted, was true penitence. All you had to do was accept his love. Of course, it sounded a lot less self-serving back then. But even the unbelievers get a clean slate now. My Redeemer is a machine, and my salvation has an expiry date. But then again, I guess yours did too. I wonder about the machine that programmed you, Father, that great glacial contraption of dogma and moving parts, clacking and iterating its way through 2,000 years of bloody history. I can't help but wonder at the way it rewired your synapses. Did it turn you into a predator? Weigh you down with lunatic strictures that no sexual being could withstand? Deny your very nature until you snapped? Or were you already malfunctioning when you embraced the church, hoping for some measure of strength you couldn't find in yourself? I knew you for years, Father. Even now, I tell myself I know you, and while you may have been many things, you were never a coward. I refuse to believe that you opted for death because it was the easy way out. I choose to believe that in those last days you found the strength to rewrite your own programming, to turn your back on obsolete algorithms 2 millennia out of date, and decide for yourself the difference between a mortal sin and an act of atonement. You loathed yourself, you loathed the things you had done, and so, finally, you made absolutely certain you could never do them again. You acted. You acted as I never could, though I'd pay so much smaller a price. There is more than this temporary absolution, you see. We have machines now that can burn the evil right out of a man, deep focus microwave emitters that vaporize the very pathways of depravity. No one can force them on you. Not yet, anyway. Members' bills wind through Parliament, legislative proposals that would see us preemptively reprogrammed for good instead of evil. But for now, the procedure is strictly voluntary. It changes you, you see. It violates some inalienable essence of selfhood. Some call it a kind of suicide in its own right. I kept telling the man at security. I never acted on it. But he could see that for himself. I never had it fixed. I must like what I am. I wonder if that makes a difference. I wonder which of us is more guilty. And that was The Eyes of God by Peter Watts. You may find that somewhat similar to the short story Axiomatic by Gregg. I think one of the reasons I like Peter Watts, and I think I was introduced to Egan before Watts, It's just far enough away that, yeah, I think I was introduced to Egan before Watts. I think I'd seen Watts's books in libraries and bookstores before I saw anything by Gregg Egan. In fact, I'm not sure if I've ever seen, certainly not recently, I haven't seen any Gregg Egan books in libraries. Um, but I hadn't read anything by Peter Watts until, I don't know, 10 years ago, give or take. Anyway, next up. So yeah, that's a cute one in terms of what is the nature of a man, or woman, or child, or, pederast, as the case may be. Kinda grim. So here we have Flesh Made Word, also by Peter Watts. Oh, I have comments. C.W. Nicholson says, "What's neat about your reads is the contrast to YouTube shorts, TTs, and IG reels." TTs. Is that like text readers? I'm not sure what an IG reel is offhand. Anyway, yes, mine is more long form, but I don't really curate much beyond what I'm actually going to read. I don't edit what the book says. Any flubs that occur are me making flubs. I also don't edit the videos after the fact to make me look good, because I'm lazy. Anyway, this is Flesh Made Word by Peter Watts. Oh, I remember this one. This one is a bummer. A bummer, dude. Another one that's a bit too edgy for its own good. Westcott was glad when it finally stopped breathing. It had taken hours this time. He had waited while it wheezed out thick, putrid smells, chest heaving and gurgling and filling the room with stubborn reminders that it was only dying, not yet dead. Not yet. He had been patient. After 10 years, he had learned to be patient. And now, finally, the thing on the table was giving up. Something moved behind him. He turned, irritated. The dying hear better than the living. A single spoken word could ruin hours of observation. But it was only Lynn, slipping quietly into the room. Westcott relaxed. Lynn knew the rules. For a moment, he even wondered why she was there. Westcott turned back to the body. Its chest had stopped moving. 60 seconds, he guessed, plus or minus 10. It was already dead by any practical definition, but there were still a few embers inside, a few sluggish nerves twitching in a brain choked with dead circuitry. Westcott's machines showed him the landscape of that dying mind, a topography of luminous filaments, eroding as he watched. The cardiac threads shuddered and lay still. 30 seconds, give or take 5. The qualifiers came automatically. There is no truth. There are no facts. There is only the envelope of the confidence interval. He could feel Lynn waiting invisibly behind him. Westcott glanced at the table for a moment, looked away again. The lid over one sunken eye had crept open a crack. He could almost imagine he had seen nothing looking out. Something changed on the monitors. "Here it comes." He didn't know why it scared him. They were only nerve impulses, after all. A fleeting ripple of electricity, barely detectable, passing from midbrain to cortex to oblivion. Just another bunch of doomed neurons, gasping. And now there was only flesh, still warm. A dozen lines lay flat on the monitors. Westcott leaned over and checked the leads connecting meat to machine. "Dead at 1943, he said into his recorder. The machines, intelligent in their own way, began to shut themselves down. Westcott studied the dead face, peeled back the unclenched eyelid with a pair of forceps. The static pupil beneath stared past him, fixed at infinity. "You took the news well," Westcott thought. He remembered Lynn. She was standing to one side, her face averted. "I'm sorry," she said. "I know this is never a good time, but it's—" He waited. "It's Zombie," she went on. "There was an accident, Russ. He wandered out on the road, and I took him into the vet's, and she says he's too badly hurt, but she won't put him to sleep without your consent. You never listed me as an owner." She stopped, like a flash flood ending. He looked down at the floor. "Put him to sleep?" "She said it's almost certain that anything they tried wouldn't work. It would cost thousands, and he'd probably die anyway."
"You mean kill him? She won't kill him without my consent."
Westcott began stripping the leads from the cadaver, lining them up on their brackets. They hung there like leeches, their suckers slimy with conductant. "And all I could think was, after 18 years, he shouldn't die alone. Someone should be there with him. But I can't, I just—" Somewhere at the base of his skull, a tiny voice cried out,
"My Christ, don't I go through enough of this shit without having to watch it happen to my own cat?"
But it was very far away, and he could barely hear it. He looked at the table. The corpse stared its cyclopean stare.
"Sure,"
Westcott said after a moment.
"I'll take care of it."
He allowed himself a half smile.
"All in a day's work."
The workstation sat in one corner of the living room, an ebony cube of tinted perspex, and for the past 10 years it had spoken to him in Carol's voice. That had hurt, at first, so much that he had nearly changed the program, but he had fought the urge and beaten it, and endured the synthetic familiarity of her voice like a man doing penance for some great sin. Somewhere in the past decade the pain had faded below the level of conscious recognition. Now he heard it list the day's mail, and felt nothing. "Jason Mosby called again from Southam," it said, catching Carol's intonation perfectly. "He still wants to interview you. He left a conversational program in my stack. You can run it any time you want."
"What else?"
"Zombie's collar stopped transmitting at 9:16, and Zombie didn't show up for his afternoon feed. You might want to call around."
"Zombie's gone,"
he said. "That's what I said."
"No, I mean—" Christ, Carol, you never were much for euphemisms, were you? "Zombie got hit by a car. He's dead. Even when we tried using them on you."
"Oh, shit." The computer paused a moment, some internal clock counting off a precise number of nanosecs. "I'm sorry, Russ." It was a lie, of course, but a fairly convincing one all the same. Outside, Westcott smiled faintly.
"It happens. Just a matter of time for all of us."
There was a sound from behind. He turned away from the cube. Lynn stood in the doorway. He could see sympathy in her eyes and something else. "Russ," she said, "I'm so sorry." He felt a twitch at the corner of his mouth.
"So's the computer."
"How are you feeling?"
He shrugged. "Okay, I guess."
"I doubt it. You had him all those years."
"Yeah, I miss him."
There was a hard knot of vacuum in his throat. He examined the feeling, distantly amazed, and almost felt a kind of gratitude. She padded across the room to him, took his hands. "I'm sorry I wasn't there at the end, Russ. It was all I could do to take him in. I just couldn't, and—"
"It's okay,"
Westcott said. "And you had to be there anyway.
It's okay,"
he said again. Lynn straightened and rubbed one hand across her cheek. "Would you rather not talk about it?" Which meant, of course, "I want to talk about it." He wondered what he could say that wouldn't be utterly predictable, and realized that he could afford to tell the truth.
"I was thinking," he said. "He had it coming to him."
Lynn blinked.
"I mean, he'd spread enough carnage on his own. Remember how every couple of days he'd bring in a wounded vole or a bird, and I never let him actually kill any of them?"
"You didn't want to see anything suffer," Lynn said.
"So I'd kill them myself."
One blow with a hammer. Brains scrambled instantly. Nothing left that could suffer after that.
I always spoiled his fun. It's such a drag having to play with dead things, he'd bitch at me for hours.
She smiled sadly. He was suffering, Russ. He wanted to die. I know you loved the little ingrate. We both did. Something flared when where the vacuum had been.
It's okay, Lynn. I watch people die all the time, remember? I'm in no great need of therapy over a fucking cat. And if I was, you could... I've at least been there this morning.
He caught himself.
I'm angry, he realized. Isn't that strange? I haven't used this feeling for years.
That's internal monologue. It's awkward because it'll break off a sentence with it. I'm not changing the voice much. It seemed odd that anything so old could have such sharp edges.
Sorry, he said evenly. I didn't mean to snap. It's just I heard enough platitudes at the vet, you know. I'm sick of people saying he wants to die when they mean it would cost too much. And I'm especially sick of people saying love when they mean economics.
Lynn put her arms around him. There was nothing they could have done. He stood there, swaying slightly, almost oblivious to her embrace.
Carol, how much did I pay to keep you breathing? And when did I decide you weren't worth the running tab? It's always economics, he said,
and brought his arms up to hold her.
You want to read minds.
Not Carol's voice, this time. This time it belonged to the guy from Southam. That guy from Southam. Mosby, that was it. Mosby's program sat in memory, directing a chorus of electrons that came out sounding like he did, a cheap auditory clone. Westcott preferred it to the original.
Read minds? He consulted. Actually, right now I'm just trying to build a working model of one.
Like me?
No, you're just a fancy menu. You ask questions. Depending on how I answer them, you branch to certain others. You're linear. Minds are more distributed.
Thoughts are not signals, but the intersection of signals.
You've read Penthorne.
I'm reading him now. I've got biomedical abstracts online. I'm also reading Gödel, the program said. If he's right, you'll never get an accurate model of the human brain because no box is big enough to hold itself.
So simplify it. Throw away the details, but preserve the essence. You don't want to make your model too big anyway. If it's as complicated as the real thing, it's just as hard to understand.
So you just cut away at the brain until you end up with something simple enough to deal with?
Westcott winced. If you've got to keep it to vid bits, I guess that's as good as any.
And what's left is still complex enough to teach you anything about human behavior?
Look at you.
Just a fancy menu.
Exactly. But you know more than the real Jason Mosby. You're a better conversationalist, too. I met him once. I bet you'd even score higher on a Turing test. Am I right?
A barely perceptible pause. I don't know. Possibly.
As far as I can tell, you're better than the original, and with only a few % of the processing power.
Getting back to...
And if the original screams and fights, when somebody tries to turn him off, Westcott went on, it's just because he's been programmed to think he can suffer. He puts a bit more effort into keeping his subroutines running. Maybe not much of a difference after all,
The program fell silent. Westcott started counting.
1,000,
1,000, 3. That actually brings up another subject I wanted to ask you about, the menu said. Almost 4 seconds to respond, and even then it had had to change the subject. It had limits. Good program, though.
You haven't
published anything on your work at VanGen, Mosby's proxy remarked. I'm unable to access your NSERC proposal, of course, but judging from the public abstract, you've been working on dead people.
Not dead. Dying.
Near-death experiences? Levitation, tunnel of light, that sort of thing?
Symptoms of anoxia, Westcott said. Mostly meaningless. We go further.
Why?
A few basic patterns are easier to record after other brain functions have shut down.
What patterns? What do they tell you? And this is all internal monologue.
They tell me there's only one way to die, Mosby. It doesn't matter what kills you, age or violence or disease. We all sing out the same damn song before we cash in. You don't even have to be human. As long as you've got a neocortex, you're part of the club. And you know what else, Mosby? We can almost read the lyric sheet. Come by in person, say a month from now, and I could preview your own last thoughts for you. I could give you the scoop of a decade. Of the decade, even.
Dr. Westcott?
He blinked. Sorry?
What patterns? What do they tell you?
What do you think?
Westcott said, and started counting again. I think you watch people die, the program answered, and you take pictures. I don't know why, but I think our subscribers would like to. Westcott was silent for a few moments.
What's your release number?
He asked at last. 6.5.
You're just out, aren't you?
April 15th, the program told him.
You're better than 6.4.
We're improving all the time. From behind, the sound of an opening door.
Stop,
Westcott said. Do you want to cancel the program or just suspend it? Carol's voice asked from the cube.
Suspend.
Westcott stared at the computer, vaguely jarred by the change in voice.
Do they ever feel crowded in there?
Can you hear it? Lynn said from behind him. He turned in his chair. She was taking off her shoes by the front door.
Hear what?
Westcott asked. She came across the room. The way her voice sort of catches sometimes. He frowned. Like she was in pain when she made the recording, she went on. Maybe it was before she was even diagnosed. But when she programmed that machine, it picked up on it. You've never heard it in all these years? Westcott said nothing. Lynn put her hands on his shoulders. You sure it isn't the time to change the personality in that thing? She asked gently.
It's not a personality, Lynn.
I know, it's just a pattern-matching algorithm. You keep saying that.
Look, I don't know what you're so worried about. It's no threat to you.
I didn't mean...
11 years ago, she talked to it for a while. It uses her speech patterns. It isn't her. I know that. It's just an old operating system that has been obsolete for the better part of a decade.
Russ...
That lousy program Mosby sent me is 10 times more sophisticated, and you can go out and buy a psyche simulator that will put that to shame. But this is all I have left, okay? The least you can do is grant me the freedom to remember her the way I choose.
She pulled back. Russ, I'm not trying to fight with you.
I'm glad.
He turned back to the workstation.
Resume.
Suspend, Lynn said. The computer waited silently. Westcott took a slow breath and turned back to face her.
I'm not one of your patients, Lynn.
His words were measured, inflectionless.
If you can't leave your own work downtown, at least find someone else to practice on.
Russ... Her voice trailed off. He looked back at her, utterly neutral. Okay, Russ. See you later. She turned and walked back to the door. Westcott noted the controlled tetanus in her movements, imagined the ratchet contraction of actomyosin as she reached for her shoes.
She's running, he thought, fascinated. My words did that to her. I make waves in the air and a million nerves light up in her brain like sheet lightning. How many ops per sec happening in there? How many operations per second? How many operations per second happening in there? How many switches opening, closing, rerouting until some of that electricity runs down her arm and makes her hand turn the doorknob?
He watched her intricate machinery close the door behind itself.
She's gone, he thought. I've won again.
Westcott watched Hamilton strap the chimp onto the table and attach the leads to its scalp. The chimp was used to the procedure. It had been subject to such indignities on previous occasions, and had always survived in good health and good spirits. There was no reason for it to expect anything different this time. As Hamilton tugged the straps, the smaller primate stiffened and hissed. Westcott studied a nearby monitor. Damn, it's nervous. Cortical tracings, normally languorous, scrambled across the screen in epileptic spasms. We can't start until it calms down. Unless it calms down. Shit. This could scotch the whole recording. Hamilton pulled one of the restraints a notch higher. The chimp, its back pulled flat against the table, flexed once and went suddenly limp. Westcott looked back at the screen. Okay, it's relaxing. Showtime, Pete. You're on in about 30 seconds. Hamilton held up the hypo. Ready. Okay, getting baseline. Now, fire when ready. Needles slid into flesh. Westcott reflected on the obvious unhumanity of the thing on the table, too small and hairy, all bow legs and elongate simian arms. A machine, that's all it is. Potassium ions jumping around in a very compact telephone switchboard. But the eyes, when he slipped and looked at them, looked back. Midbrain signature in 50 seconds, Westcott read off. Give or take 10. Okay, Hamilton said. It's going through the tunnel. Just a machine running out of fuel. A few nerves sputter and the system thinks it sees lights, feels motion. There, thalamus, Hamilton reported. Right on time. Now it's in the red. A pause. Neocortex now. Same thing, same damn thing every time. Westcott didn't look. He knew the pattern. He had seen its handwriting in the brains of half a dozen species, watched that same familiar cipher scurry through dying minds in hospital beds and operating theaters and the twisted wreckage of convenient automobiles. By now, he didn't even need the machines to see it. He only had to look at the eyes. Once, in a moment of reckless Once, in a moment of reckless undiscipline, he'd wondered if he were witnessing the flight of the soul, come crawling to the surface of the mind like an earthworm flushed by heavy rains. Another time, he'd thought he might have captured the EEG of the Grim Reaper. He no longer allowed himself such unbridled license. Now he only stared at the widening pupils within those eyes, and heard the final panicked bleating of the cardiac monitor. Something behind the eyes went out. What were you? He wondered. Dunno yet, Hamilton said beside him, but another week, 2 at the outside, and we've got it nailed. Westcott blinked. Hamilton started unstrapping the carcass. After a moment, he looked up. Russ? It knew. Westcott stared at the monitor, all flat lines and static now. Yeah, Hamilton shrugged. I wish I knew what tips them off sometimes. Save a lot of time. He dumped the chimp's body into a plastic bag. Its dilated pupils stared out at Westcott in a grotesque parody of human astonishment. Russ, you okay? He blinked. The dead eyes lost control. Westcott looked up and saw Hamilton watching him with a strange expression. Sure, he said easily. Never better. There was this cage. Something moved inside that he almost recognized, a small, furred body that looked familiar. But up close he could see his mistake. It was only a wax dummy, or maybe an embalmed specimen the undergrads hadn't got to yet. There were tubes running into it at odd places, carrying sluggish aliquots of yellow fluid. The specimen jaundiced, bloated as he watched. He reached through the bars of the cage. He could do that somehow, even though the gaps were only a few centimeters wide, and touched the thing inside. Its eyes opened and stared past him, blank and blind with pain, and their pupils were not vertical as he had expected, but round and utterly human. He felt her awaken in the night beside him and not move. He didn't have to look. He heard the change in her breathing, could almost feel her systems firing up, her eyes locking onto him in the near darkness. He lay on his back, looking up at a ceiling full of shadow, and did not acknowledge her. He turned his face to stare at the faint gray light leaking through the window. Straining, he could just hear distant city sounds. He wondered, for a moment, if she hurt as much as he did, then realized that there was no contest. The strongest pain he could summon was mere aftertaste. "I called the vet today," he said. "She said they didn't need my consent. They didn't need me there at all. They would have shut Zombie down the moment you brought him in, only you told them not to." She did not move. "So you lied. You fixed it so I'd have to be there, watching one more piece of my life getting—" He took a breath. "Chipped away." At last she spoke. "Russ." "But you don't hate me, so why would you put me through that? You must have thought it would be good for me somehow." "Russ, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." "I don't think that's entirely true," he remarked. "No, I guess not." Then, almost hopefully, "It did hurt, didn't it?" He blinked against a brief stinging in his eyes. "What do you think?" "I think 9 years ago I moved in with the most caring, humane person I'd ever known. And 2 days ago I didn't know if he'd give a damn about the death of a pet he'd had for 18 years. I really didn't know, Russ, and I'm sorry, but I had to find out. Does that make sense?" He tried to remember. "I think you were wrong from the start. I think you gave me too much credit 9 years ago." He felt her head shake. "Russ, after Carol died, I was afraid you were going to. I remember hoping I'd never be able to hurt that much over another human being." "Oh, I remember hoping I'd never be able to hurt that much over another human being. I fell in love with you because you could." "Oh, I loved her all right. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth at least. Never did get around to figuring out her final worth." "That's not why you did it. You remember how she was suffering." "Actually, no. She had all those painkillers cruising through her system. That's what they told me. By the time they started cutting pieces out of her, she was numb." "Russ, I was there too. They said there was no hope. She was in constant pain. They said she'd want to die." "Oh, yes. Later, that's what they said, when it was time to decide. Because they knew." He stopped. "They knew," he said again, "what I wanted to hear." Beside him, Lynn grew very still. He laughed once, softly. "I shouldn't have been so easy to convince, though. I knew better. We're not hardwired for death with dignity. Life's been kicking and clawing and doing anything it can to take a few more breaths for over 3 billion years. You can't just decide to turn yourself off." She slid an arm across his chest. "People turn themselves off all the time, Russ. Too often. You know that." He didn't answer. A distant siren poisoned the emptiness. "Not Carol," he said after a while. "I made that decision for her." Lynn put her head on his shoulder. "And you've spent 10 years trying to find out if you guessed right. But they're not her, Russ. All the people you've recorded, all the animals you've put down, they're not her." "No, they're not." He closed his eyes. They don't linger on month after month. They don't shrivel up. You know they're going to die, and it's always quick. You don't have to come in day after day watching them change into something that rattles every time it breathes, that doesn't even know who you are, and you wish it would just... Westcott opened his eyes. "I keep forgetting what you do for a living," he said. "Russ." He looked over at her calmly. "Why are you doing this to me? You think I haven't already been over it enough?" "Russ, I'm only..." "Because it won't work, you know. It's too late. It took long enough, but I know how the mind works now, and you know what? It's nothing special after all. It's not spiritual. It's not even quantum. It's just a bunch of switches wired together. So it doesn't matter if people can't speak their minds.
Pretty soon, I'll be able to read them. His voice was level and reasoned. He kept his eyes on the ceiling. The darkened light fixture there seemed to waver before his eyes. He blinked, and the room swam suddenly out of focus. She reached up to touch the wetness on his face. "It scares you," she whispered. "You've been chasing it for 10 years, and you've almost got it, and it scares the shit out of you." He smiled and wouldn't look at her. "No, that isn't it. That isn't it at all." "What then?" He took a breath. "I just realized I don't care one way or the other anymore."
He came home, clutching the printout, and knew from the sudden emptiness of the apartment that he had been defeated here as well. The workstation slept in its corner. Several fitful readouts twinkled on one of its faces, a sparse autonomic mosaic. He walked towards it, and halfway there, one face of the cube flashed to life. Lynn, from the shoulders up, looked out at him from the screen. Westcott glanced around the room. He almost called out. On the cube, Lynn's lips moved. "Hello, Russ," they said. He managed a short laugh. "Never thought I'd see you in there." "I finally tried one of these things. You were right. They've come a long way in 10 years.
"You're a real simulation, not just a fancy conversational routine?"
Uh-huh. It's pretty amazing. It ate all sorts of video footage and all my medical and academic records, and then I had to talk with it until it got a feel for who I was."
"And who is that?"
he wondered absently. "It changed right there while I was talking to it, Russ. It was really spooky. It started out in this dead monotone, and as we talked, it started mimicking my voice and my mannerisms, and in a little while it sounded just like me, and here it is. It went from machine to human in about 4 hours." He smiled, not easily, because he knew what was coming next. Actually, it was a bit like watching a time-lapse video of you over the past few years," the model said, "played backwards." He kept his voice exactly level.
"You're not coming home."
"Sure I am, Russ. Only home isn't here anymore. I wish it were. You don't know how badly I wish it were, but you just can't let it go, and I can't live with that anymore."
"You still don't understand. It's just a program that happens to sound like Carol did. It's nothing. I'll wipe it if it's that important to you."
"That's not what I'm talking about, Russ." He thought of asking for details and didn't.
"Lynn."
Her mouth widened. It wasn't a smile. "Don't ask, Russ. I can't come back until you do."
"But I'm right here."
She shook her head. "The last time I saw Russ Westcott, he cried. Just a little. And I think he's been hunting something for 10 years, and he finally caught a glimpse of it, and it was too big, so he went away and left some sort of autopilot in charge. And I don't blame him, and you're a very good likeness, really you are, but there's nothing in you that knows how to feel." Westcott thought of acetylcholine esterase and endogenous opioids. I can't believe I got that right first try.
"You're wrong, Carol. I know more about feelings than almost anyone in the world."
On the screen, Lynn's proxy sighed through a faint smile. The simulation was wearing new earrings. They looked like antique printed circuits. Westcott wanted to comment on them, to compliment or criticize or do anything to force the conversation into less dangerous territory. But he was afraid that she had worn them for years and he just hadn't noticed, so he said nothing.
"Why couldn't you tell me yourself?" he said at last. "Don't I deserve that much? Why couldn't you at least leave me in person?"
This is in person, Russ. It's as in person as you ever let anyone get with you anymore.
That's bullshit. Did I ask you to go out and get yourself simmed? Do you think I see you as some sort of cartoon? My Christ, Lynn.
I don't take it personally, Russ. We're all cartoons as far as you're concerned.
What in Christ's name are you talking about?
I don't blame you, really. Why learn 3D chess when you can reduce it down to tic-tac-toe? You understand it perfectly, and you always win. Except it isn't that much fun to play, of course.
Lynn?
Your models only simplify reality, Russ. They don't recreate it.
Westcott remembered the printout in his hand. Sure they do. Enough of it, anyway.
So,
The image looked down for a moment. Uncanny, the way it fakes and breaks eye contact like that.
you have your answer.
We have the answer. Me and a few terabytes of software and a bunch of colleagues, Lynn. People who work with me face to face.
She looked up again, and Westcott was amazed that the program had even mimicked the sudden, sad brightness her eyes would have had in that moment. So what's the answer? What's at the end of the tunnel? He shrugged.
Not much after all. An anticlimax.
I hope it was more than that, Russ. It killed us.
Or it could have been just an artifact of the procedure. The old observer effect, maybe. Common sense could have told us as much. I could have saved myself the...
Russ. He didn't look at the screen.
There's nothing down there at all, he said finally. Nothing that thinks. I never liked it down there. It's all just raw instinct at the center. Left over from way back when the limbic system was the brain. Only now it's just unskilled labor, right? Just one small part of the whole to do all that petty autonomic shit the upstart neocortex can't be bothered with. I never even considered that it might still be somehow alive.
His voice trailed off. Lynn's ghost waited silently, perhaps unequipped to respond. Perhaps programmed not to.
You die from the outside in. Did you know that? He said when the silence hurt more than the words. And then, just for a moment, the center is all you are again. And down there, nobody wants to, even the suicides, they were just fooling themselves. Intellectual games. We're so fucking proud of thinking ourselves to death that we've forgotten all about the old reptilian part sleeping inside. The part that doesn't calculate ethics or quality of life or burdens on the next of kin. It just wants to live. That's all it's programmed for, you know. And at the very end, when we aren't around to keep it in line anymore, it comes up and it looks around, and at that last moment, it knows it's been betrayed, and it screams.
He thought he heard someone speak his name, but he didn't look up to find out.
That's what we always found, he said. Something waking up after 100 million years, scared to death.
His words hung there in front of him. You don't know that. Her voice was distant, barely familiar, with a sudden urgency to it. You said yourself that it could be an artifact. She might not have felt that way at all, Russ. You don't have the data.
Doesn't matter, he murmured. Wetware always dies the same way.
He looked up at the screen. And the image was, for Christ's sakes, crying. Phosphorescent tears on artificial cheeks in some obscene parody of what Lynn would do if she had been there. Westcott felt sudden hatred for the software that wept for him, for the intimacy of its machine intuition, for the precision of its forgery, for the simple fact that it knew her.
No big deal, he said. Like I said, an anticlimax. Anyhow, I suppose you have to go back and report to your body.
I can stay if you want. I know how hard this must be for you, Russ.
No, you don't, Westcott smiled. Lynn might have. You're just accessing a psych database somewhere. Good try, though.
I don't have to go, Russ.
Hey, that's not who I am anymore. Remember?
We can keep talking if you want.
Right. A dialogue between a caricature and an autopilot.
I don't have to leave right away.
Your algorithm's showing, he said, still smiling, and then, tersely, stop.
The cube darkened. Do you want to cancel the program or just suspend it? Carol asked. He stood there for a while without answering, staring into that black, featureless cube of perspex. He could see nothing inside but his own reflection. Cancel, he said at last, and delete. And that was Flesh Made Word by Peter Watts. Bit of a bummer. Bit of a bummer. Tangentially related to the death of cats in Peter Watts related media, adjacent to Peter Watts, if you ever need a eulogy for your cat, Peter Watts. I don't think he does them on commission, and I would hope he doesn't, because that would be so weird. But some of his eulogies that he's done up on his blog for his pets that have passed are just... they break me consistently. If you remember how I blubbered and broke down during some of the stuff I've read, oh man. There's a couple he's done where I'm just like, oh, Jesus. It hurts. He actually did a really fascinating eulogy, sort of, for a guy, and of course I can't remember his name, but he was this homeless guy that was living near him and his current significant other, who kind of just vanished off the grid. And it's brilliant. Oh my gosh, it's so heartfelt. For a guy who waxes misanthropic, he really does just fucking care. He really cares about people and just doing well by people as best he can. It's, I can't really think back into it right now because I will break apart. So I definitely have time. We're going to read this last one, Nimbus. This is a cute one. I love the conceit of this one. The core conceptual conceit of this one is just delightful. I thoroughly enjoy it. TikToks. Okay, that's what I would have figured that out. I would have eventually figured that out, but yes, I do tend towards longer form content, for lack of a better term, just kind of by the nature of what I've decided to do. Alright, so this is Nimbus by Peter Watts. She's been out there for hours now, listening to the clouds. I can see the Radio Shack receiver balanced on her knees. I can see the headphone wires snaking up and cutting her off from the world. Or connecting her, I suppose. Jess is hooked into the sky now, in a way I'll never be. She can hear it talking. The clouds advance, threatening gray anvils and mountains boiling in ominous slow motion, and the phones fill her head with alien grumbles and moans. God, she looks just like her mother. I catch her profile, and for a moment it is Anne there, gently chiding. Of course not, Jess. There aren't any spirits. They're just clouds. But now I see her face, and 8 years have passed in a flash, and I know this can't be Anne. Anne knew how to smile. I should go out and join her. It's still safe enough. We've got a good half hour before the storm hits. Not that it's really going to hit us. It's just passing through, they say, on its way to some other target. Still, I wonder if it knows we're in the way. I wonder if it cares. I will join her. For once, I will not be a coward. My daughter sits 5 meters away in our own backyard, and I am damn well going to be there for her. It's the least I can do before I go. I wonder if that will mean anything to her. An aftermath before the Enlightenment. It was as though somebody had turned the city upside down and shaken it. We waded through a shallow sea of detritus. Broken walls, slabs of torn roofing, toilets and sofas and shattered glass. I walked behind Anne, Jess bouncing on my shoulders and making happy gurgling noises. Just over a year old, not quite talking yet, but plenty old enough for continual astonishment. You could see it in her eyes. Every blown newspaper, every bird, every step was a new experience in wonder. Also, every loaded shotgun, every trigger-happy National Guardsman. This was a time when people still thought they owned things. They saw their homes strewn across 2 city blocks, and the enemy they feared was not the weather, but each other. Hurricanes were accidents, freaks of nature. The experts were still blaming volcanoes and the greenhouse effect for everything. Looters, on the other hand, were real. They were tangible. They were a problem with an obvious solution. The volunteers' shelter squatted in the distance like a circus tent at Armageddon. A tired-looking woman inside had given us shovels and pitchforks and directed us to the nearest pile of unmanned debris. We began to pitch pieces of someone's life into an enormous blue dumpster. Anne and I worked side by side, stopping occasionally to pass Jessica back and forth. I wondered what new treasures I was about to unearth. Some priceless family heirloom miraculously spared? A complete collection of Jethro Tull CDs? Just a game, of course. The whole area had been combed. The owners had come and despaired of salvage. There was only wreckage beneath the wreckage. Still, every now and then I thought I saw something shining in the dirt, a bottle cap or a gum wrapper or a Rolex. My pitchfork punched through a chunk of plaster and slid into something soft. It dropped suddenly under my weight, as if lubricated. It stopped. I heard the muted hiss of escaping gas. Something smelled, very faintly, of rotten meat. This isn't what I think it is. The crews have already been here. They used trained dogs and infrared scopes, and they've already found all the bodies. They couldn't have missed anything. There's nothing here but wood and plaster and cement. I tightened my grip on the pitchfork, pulled up on the shaft. The tines rose up from the plaster, slick, dark, wet. Anne was laughing. I couldn't believe it. I looked up, but she wasn't looking at me or the pitchfork or the coagulating stain. She was looking across the wreckage to a Ford pickup, loaded with locals and their rifles, inching its way down a pathway cleared in the road. "Get a load of the bumper," she said, oblivious to my discovery. There was a bumper sticker on the driver's side. I saw the caricature of a storm cloud inside the classic red circle with diagonal slash. And a slogan. A warning to whom it may concern. Clouds, we're gonna kick your ass. Jess takes off the headphones as I join her. She touches a button on the receiver. Cryptic wails, oddly familiar, rise from a speaker on the front of the device. We sit for a moment without speaking, letting the sounds wash over us. Everything about her is so pale. I can barely see her eyebrows. "Do they know where it's headed?" Jess asks at last. I shake my head. "There's Hanford, but they've never gone after a reactor before. They say it might be trying to get up enough steam to go over the mountains. Maybe it's going after Vancouver or SeaTac again." I tap the box on her knees. "Hey, it might be laying plans even as we speak. You've been listening to that thing long enough. You should know what it's saying by now." A distant flicker of sheet lightning strobes on the horizon. From Jessica's receiver, a dozen voices wail a discordant crescendo. "Or you could even talk to it," I continue. "I saw the other day they've got 2-ways now. Like yours, only you can send as well as receive." Jess fingers the volume control. "It's just a gimmick, Dad. These things couldn't put out enough power to get heard over all the other stuff in the air. TV and radio and—" She cocks her head at the sounds coming from the speaker. Besides, nobody understands what they're saying anyway. Ah, but they could understand us, I say, trying for a touch of mock drama. Think so? Her voice is expressionless, indifferent. I push on anyway. Talking at least helps paper over my fear a bit. Sure, the big ones could understand anyway. A storm this size must have an IQ in the 6 digits, easy. I suppose, Jess says. Inside, something tears a little. Doesn't it matter to you? She just looks at me. Don't you want to know? I say. We're sitting here underneath this huge thing that nobody understands. We don't know what it's doing or why, and you sit there listening while it shouts at itself, and you don't seem to care that it changed everything overnight. But of course, she doesn't remember that. Her memory doesn't go back to when we thought that the clouds were just clouds. She never knew what it was like to rule the world, and she never expects to. My daughter is indifferent to defeat. Suddenly, unbearably, I just want to hold her. God, Jess, I'm sorry we messed up so badly. With effort, I control myself. I just wish you could remember the way it was. Why? She asks. What was so different? I look at her, astonished. Everything! It doesn't sound like it. They say we never understood the weather. There were hurricanes and tornadoes even before, and sometimes they'd smash whole cities and nobody could stop them then either. So what if it happens because the sky's alive or because it's, random? Because your mother is dead, Jess, and after all these years I still don't know what killed her. Was it just blind chance? Was it the reflex of some slow, stupid animal that was only scratching an itch? Can the sky commit murder? It matters, is all I tell her, even if it doesn't make a difference. The front is almost directly overhead now, like the mouth of a great black cave, crawling across the heavens. West, all is clear. Above, the squall line tears the sky into jagged halves. East, the world is a dark, murky green. I feel so vulnerable out here. I glance back over my shoulder. The armored house crouches at our backs, only the biggest trees left to keep it company. It's been 8 years, and the storms still haven't managed to dig us out. They got Mexico City, and Berlin, and the whole damn Golden Horseshoe, but our little house hangs in there like a festering cyst embedded in the landscape. Then again, they probably just haven't noticed us yet. Reprieved. The thing in the sky had gone to sleep, at least in our corner of the world. The source of its awareness, sources rather, for they were legion, had convected into the stratosphere and frozen, a billion crystalline motes of suspended intellect. By the time they came back down, they'd be on the other side of the world, and it would take days for the rest of the collective conscious to fill the gap. We used the time to ready our defenses. I was inspecting the exoskeleton the contractors had just grafted onto the house. Anne was around front, checking the storm shutters. Our home had become monstrous, an angular fortress studded with steel beams and lightning rods. A few years earlier, we would have sued anyone who did this to us. Today, we had gone into hock to pay for the retrofit. I looked up at a faint roar from overhead. The sun reflected off a cluster of tiny cruciform shapes drawing contrails across the sky. Cloud cedars. A common enough sight. In those days, we still thought we could fight back. They won't work, Jess said, seriously at my elbow. I looked down, startled. Hey, Jess, didn't see you sneaking up on me. They're just getting the clouds mad, she said, with all the certainty that a 4-year-old can muster. She squinted up into the blue expanse. They're just trying to kill the messenger. I squatted down, regarded her eye to eye. And who told you that? Not her mother, anyway. That woman, talking to Mom. Not just a woman, I saw as I rounded the corner into the front yard. A couple. A couple. Early 20s, mildly scruffy, both bearing slogans on their t-shirts. Love your mother, was the woman's chest told me, over a decal of the Earth from lunar orbit. The man's shirt was more verbose. Unlimited growth, the creed of carcinoma. No room for a picture on that one. Gaianists, retreating across the lawn, facing Anne as if afraid to turn their backs. Anne was smiling and waving, the very picture of inoffense, but I really felt for the poor bastards. They probably never knew what hit them. Sometimes, when Seventh-day Adventists came calling, Anne would actually invite them in for a little target practice. It was usually the Adventists who asked to leave. Did they have anything worthwhile to say? I asked her now. Not really. Anne stopped waving and turned to face me. Her smile morphed into a triumphant smirk. We're angering the sky gods, you know that? Thou shalt not inhabit a single-family dwelling. Thou shalt honor thy environmental impact to keep it low. They could be right, I remarked. At least, there weren't many people around to argue the point. Most of our former neighbors had already retreated into hives. Not that their environmental impact had had much to do with it. Well, I'll grant it's not as flaky as some of the things they come up with, Anne admitted, but if they're going to blame me for the revenge of the cloud demons, they damn well better have a rational argument or two waiting in the wings. I take it they didn't. She snorted. The same hokey metaphors. Gaia's leaping into action to fight the human disease. I guess hurricanes are supposed to be some sort of penicillin. No crazier than some of the things the experts say. Yeah, well, I don't necessarily believe them either. Maybe you should, I said. I mean, we sure as hell don't know what's going on. And you think they do? Just a couple of years ago, they were denying everything, remember? Life can't exist without stable, organized structure, they said. I sort of thought they'd learned a few things since then. No kidding. Anne's eyes grew round with enlightenment, and all this time I thought they were just making up trendy buzzwords. Jess wandered between us. Anne scooped her up. Jess scrambled onto her mother's shoulders and surveyed the world from dizzying adult height. I glanced back at the retreating evangelists. So, how did you handle those two? I agreed with them, Anne said. Agreed? Sure. We're a disease. Fine. Only some of us have mutated. She jerked a thumb at our castle. Now, we're resistant to antibiotics. We are resistant to antibiotics. We've insisted ourselves like hermit crabs. We've been pruned, cut back, decimated, but not destroyed. We are only in remission. But now, outside the battlements, we're naked. Even at this range, the storm could reach out and swat us both in an instant. How can Jess just sit there? I can't even enjoy sunny days anymore, I admit to her. I can't even enjoy sunny days anymore, I admit to her. She looks at me, and I know her perplexity is not because I can't enjoy clear skies, but because I would even think it worthy of comment. I keep talking, refusing the chronic realization that we're aliens to each other. The sky can be pure blue and sunshine, but if there's even one fluffy little cumulus bumping along, I can't help feeling watched. It doesn't matter if it's too small to think on its own, or that it'll dissipate before it gets a chance to upload. I keep thinking it's some sort of spy. It's going to report back somewhere. I don't think they can see, Jess says absently. They just sense big things like cities and smokestacks, hotspots, or things that itch. That's all. The wind breathes, deceptively gentle, in her hair. Above us, a finger of gray vapor crawls between two towering masses of cumulonimbus. What's happening up there? A random conjunction of water droplets? A 25,000 baud data bump between processing nodes? Even after all this time, it sounds absurd. So many eloquent theories, so many explanations for our downfall. Everyone's talking about order from chaos. Fluid geometry, bioelectric microbes that live in the clouds, complex behaviors emerging from some insane alliance of mist and electrochemistry. It looks scientific enough on paper, but spoken aloud, it always sounds like an incantation. And none of it helps. The near distance is lit with intermittent flashes of light. The storm walks toward us on jagged fractal legs. I feel like an insect under the heel of a descending boot. Maybe that's a positive sign. Would I be afraid if I had really given up? Maybe. Maybe the situation is irrelevant. Maybe cowards are always afraid. Jess's receiver is crying incessantly. Whale songs, I hear myself say, and the tremor in my voice is barely discernible. Humpback whales, that's what they sound like. Jess fixes her eyes back on the sky. They don't sound like anything, Dad. It's just electricity. Only the receiver sort of makes it sound like something we know. Another gimmick. We've fallen from God's chosen to endangered species in only a decade, and the hustlers still won't look up from their market profiles. I can sympathize. Looming above us, right now, are the ones who threw us into the street. The forward overhang is almost upon us. 10 kilometers overhead, winds are screaming past each other at 60 meters a second. So far, the storm isn't even breathing hard. There was a banshee raging through the foothills. It writhed with tornadoes. Anne and I had watched the whirling black tentacles tearing at the horizon before we'd fled underground. Tornadoes were impossible during the winter, we'd been assured just a year before. Yet here we were, huddling together as the world shook, and all our reinforcements might as well have been made of paper if one of those figments came calling. Sex is instinctive at times like those. Jeopardy reduces us to automata, even. There is no room for love when the genes reassert themselves. Even pleasure is irrelevant. We were just another pair of mammals trying to maximize our fitness before the other shoe dropped. Afterwards, at least, we were still allowed to feel. We clung together, blind and invisible in the darkness, almost crushing each other with the weight of our own desperation. We couldn't stop crying. I gave silent thanks that Jess had been trapped at daycare when the front came through. I wouldn't have stood the strain of a brave facade that night. After a while, Anne stopped shaking. She lay in my arms, sniffling quietly. Dim floaters of virtual light swarmed maddeningly at the edge of my vision. The gods have come back, she said at last. Gods? Anne was usually so bloody empirical. The old ones, she said, the Old Testament gods, the Greek pantheon, thunderbolts and fire and brimstone. We thought we'd outgrown them, you know. We thought... I felt a deep, trembling breath. I thought, she continued, I thought we didn't need them anymore. But we did. We fucked up so horribly on our own. There was nobody to keep us in line, and we trampled everything. I stroked her back. Old news, Annie. You know we've cleaned things up. Hardly any cities allow gasoline anymore. Extinctions have leveled off. I even heard the other day that rainforest biomass increased last year. That's not us. A sigh whispered across my cheek. We're no better than we ever were. We're just afraid of a spanking. Like spoiled kids caught drawing naughty pictures on the walls. And we still don't know for sure if the clouds are really alive. Even if they are, that doesn't make them intelligent. Some people still say this is all just a weird side effect of chemicals in the atmosphere. We're begging for mercy, John. That's all we're doing. We breathed against dark, distant roaring for a few moments. At least we're doing something, I said at last. Maybe we're not doing it for all the enlightened reasons we should be, but at least we're cleaning up. That's something. Not enough, she said. We threw shit at something for centuries. How can a few prayers and sacrifices make it just go away and leave us alone? Even if it even exists. And if it does have any more brains than a flatworm, I guess you get the gods you deserve. I tried to think of something to say, some twig of false reassurance. But, as usual, I wasn't fast enough. Anne picked herself up first. At least we've learned a little humility, and who knows, maybe the gods will answer our prayers before Jess grows up. They didn't. The experts tell us now that our supplications are on indefinite hold. We're praying to something that shrouds the whole planet, after all. It takes time for such a huge system to assimilate new information, more time to react. The clouds don't live by human clocks. We swarm like bacteria to them, doubling our numbers in an instant. How fast the response from our microbial perspective? How long before the knee jerks? The experts mumble jargon amongst themselves and guess. Decades, maybe 50 years. This monster advancing on us now is answering a summons from the last century. The sky screams down to fight with ghosts. It doesn't see me. If it sees anything at all, it is only the afterimage of some insulting sore, decades old, that needs to be disinfected. I lean against the wind. Murky chaos sweeps across something I used to call property. The house recedes behind me. I don't dare look, but I know it must be kilometers away, and somehow I'm paralyzed. This blind, seething Medusa claws its way towards me, and its face covers the whole sky. How can I not look? Jessica. I can see her from the corner of my eye. With enormous effort, I move my head a little, and she comes into focus. She is looking at the heavens, but her expression is not terrified or awed or even curious. Slowly, smooth as an oiled machine, she lowers her eyes to earth and switches off the receiver. It hardly matters anymore. The thunder is continuous. The wind is an incessant roar. The first hailstones are pelting down on us. If we stay out here, we'll be dead in 2 hours. Doesn't she know it? Is this some sort of test? Am I supposed to prove my love for her by facing down God like this? Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe now's the time. Maybe... Jessica puts her hand on my knee. Come on, she says, like a parent. Let's go inside. I am remembering the last time I saw Anne. I have no choice. The moment traps me when I'm not looking, embeds me in a cross-section of time stopped dead when the lightning hit 10 meters behind her. The world is a flat mosaic in blinding black and white, strobe-lit, motionless. Sheets of gray water are suspended in the act of slamming the earth. Anne is just out of reach, head down, her determination as clear as a Kodalith snapshot in perfect focus. She is damn well going to make it to safety, and she doesn't care what gets in her way. And then the lightning implodes into darkness. The world jerks back into motion with a sound like Hiroshima and the stench of burning electricity, but my eyes are shut tight, still fixed on that receding instant. There is sudden pain, small fingernails gouging the flesh of my palm, and I know that Jessica has not closed her eyes, that she knows more of this moment than I can bear to. I pray, for the only time in my life, I pray to the sky, please let me be mistaken. Take someone else, take me, take the whole fucking city, only please give her back. I'm sorry, I didn't believe. 40 or 50 years from now, according to some, it might hear that. Too late for Anne. Too late even for me. It's still out there, just passing through. It drums its fingers on the ground, and all our reinforced talismans can barely keep it out. Even here, in this underground sanctum, the walls are shaking. It doesn't scare me anymore. There was another time, long ago, when I wasn't afraid. Back then, the shapes in the sky were friendly. Snow-covered mountains, magical kingdoms. Once I even saw Anne up there. But now I only see something malign and hideous, ancient, something slow to anger and impossible to appease. In the thousands of years we spent watching the clouds, after all the visions and portents we read there, never once did we see the thing that was really looking back. We see it now. I wonder which epitaphs they'll be reading tomorrow. What city is about to be shattered by impossible tornadoes? How many will die in this fresh onslaught of hailstones and broken glass? I don't know. I don't even care. That surprises me. Just a few days ago, I think it would have mattered. Now, even the realization that we are spared barely moves me to indifference. Jess, how can you sleep through this? The wind tries to uproot us. Bits of God's brain bash themselves against our shelter, and somehow you can just curl up in the corner and block it out. You're so much older than I am, Jess. You learned not to care years ago. Barely any of you shines out anymore. Even the glimpses I catch only seem like old photographs, vague reminders of what you used to be. Do I really love you as much as I tell myself? Maybe all I love is my own nostalgia. I gave you a start, at least. I gave you a few soft years before things fell apart. But then the world split in two, and the part I can live in keeps shrinking. You slip so easily between both worlds. Your whole generation is amphibious. Not mine. There's nothing left I can offer you. You don't need me at all. Before long, I'd have dragged you down with me. I won't let that happen. You're half Anne, after all. The maelstrom covers the sound of my final ascent. I wonder what Anne would think of me now. She'd disapprove, I guess. She was too much of a fighter to ever give up. I don't think she had a suicidal thought in her whole life. And suddenly, climbing the stairs, I realize that I can ask her right now if I want to. Anne is watching me from a dark corner of the room, through weathered adolescent eyes open to mere slits. Is she going to call me back? Is she going to berate me for giving in, say that she loves me? I hesitate. I open my mouth. But she closes her eyes without a word. And that was Nimbus by Peter Watts. Kind of a depressing ending, but then again, how would any of you take it if it turned out that every single cloud formation you saw in the sky was actively malevolent towards your entire species' existence and wanted you dead, dead, dead? I love that. Absolutely adore it. Them being a weird, distributed network type affair is just kind of cute. Cute justification for the conceit. I admire that. Speaking of Peter Watts, let's check his website real quick. I am facing away from the microphone because I am looking the wrong way. Rifters. Nope, nothing new. After the one on July 5th, which is, it's not really an obituary by his own admission, but it's as close as the guy was ever going to get. Kevin Videsh Das. It's very classy stuff. Very moving and meaningful. Anyway, that will do it for today. It looks like I will be around this Friday, so we should hopefully finish the book on Wednesday and Friday. Between those two, how much do we have left?
if I split that in half?
If I split that in half, maybe, just maybe, just possibly maybe.
I think we could do a little better than that. I want to say I did a niche as well at some point, but I'm not absolutely sure. Anyway, let me put a bookmark in the middle there so that I see what I've got laid out. Hopefully this new microphone is working well and isn't picking up so much background noise that it is distracting. I haven't listened to Fridays. I wanted to, and then I forgot to download it onto where I was going to be. Anyway, hopefully this is working out. It's a little more work because I have to move around more. I have to be in control of the thing. I don't have like an armature, a complicated armature for the thing. It's just kind of a weighted base with a short little pole. Nothing crazy. I am looking at other microphone options that are a bit more manageable, but this will do in a pinch as a half measure. Anyway, with that, this whole one was done with the new microphone. Yep. I think that's it. That's all I can think of. Anything else? Anything fancy? No? Nothing? Okay. Anyway, as ever, stay safe, stay sane, stay cool or toasty as per your preference. Right now, it is stay cool, cool, cool as best you possibly can because it is hot, hot, hot today where I'm at. A little breeze, but not much else. I'd say something like wear a mask to filter out some of the smog in the air from, I don't know, everything burning down. I know, like out in the Midwest, it's really bad, which means I'll be getting it probably this week. The really bad part, like I know in Montana, it's bad. Someone was quoted from Montana as saying, "It is so bad out, if I hung up a piece of pork, it would turn into ham," which is sort of horrifying in its way. Anyway, try and keep your lungs clear of that gunk as best you can, I guess. I'm not trying to mother hen yous. But yeah, be careful. Like that's... It's one of those not obvious threats, not immediately tangible threats. Ambiguous? What's the... Anyway, it's potentially problematic, but it builds up over time, and you really don't want to deal with lung cancer in, call it 20, 30 years. But, you know, the world's gonna world, and I'm not telling people how to live their life, because God knows, I'm no guru. And generally most people who claim to be a guru are in it for them. Anyway, I am going to call it for today. Oh, and be decent to each other, I guess, as best you can. As difficult as that can be sometimes. Sometimes you just want to strangle people. You just wonder, how are they still breathing my precious, precious nitrogen? How? How are they still around, and why have we let it get this bad? Anyway, that's it. I'll see you all Wednesday, maybe, and we'll continue the book from there. What short stories do we have for Wednesday? Mayfly, which is great. I like Mayfly. Which is Ambassador? For the record, the reference to zombie, the name of that character's cat, that is absolutely Peter Watts inserting one of his cats into the narrative. And it sounds crass, the thing he's mentioning, the way he's talking about it, but that's because A, the character is crass, and B, you know, it's a coping mechanism. some goofy little ones here. A bunch of much shorter ones next week, barring Mayfly and Ambassador, which are mid-sized. Anyway, next week, Jesus, this Wednesday. My brain is just not here. Long weekend. Anyway, I'll see you all later. I gotta shut up. That's the wrong button. Will he ever find the button? Will he ever find the 7 Dragon Balls? Or is it 8? 7. It's one of those power